The day my mother looked me straight in the eyes and demanded a DNA test on my 5-year-old son still plays in my mind like a scene I cannot erase. We were standing in the living room of the house I grew up in, the same room where she once rocked me to sleep. Sunlight was pouring through the curtains, soft and golden, but the air felt cold. My little boy, Ethan, was playing with his toy cars on the floor, making quiet engine sounds, completely unaware that the woman who should have been his greatest protector was trying to erase him from our family's future. "I want a DNA test," she said, her voice calm, almost polite. "If he isn't truly blood, he will not be included in the will. I will not allow someone who doesn't belong to take what your father worked for." I stared at her. For a moment I could not speak. My heart felt like it had been dropped from a great height. This was the woman who had held me when I cried as a child. The woman who had taught me how to tie my shoes and how to stand tall. Yet here she was, treating my son like a possible stranger who needed to be proven worthy of love and inheritance. I had always known my mother was strict. After my father passed away 6 months earlier, she became the one in control of the estate. The house, the savings, the investments, everything rested in her hands as the executor. My 2 older sisters lived comfortable lives and rarely questioned her decisions. I was the youngest, the one who had married young, the one whose husband had left when Ethan was only 2. In her eyes, that made me reckless. That made my son questionable. But I had never imagined she would go this far. Ethan looked up at us with his big curious eyes. "Grandma, are you mad?" he asked in that soft little voice that always melted me. She did not answer him. She simply kept her gaze locked on me, waiting. I felt the weight of years of small judgments pressing down on my chest. The way she had always asked careful questions about Ethan's father. The way she had once said, almost casually, that children sometimes look nothing like their parents for a reason. I had brushed those comments aside. I told myself she was just protective of the family name and the money. I told myself love would win in the end. That afternoon, something inside me shifted. The pain was sharp, but underneath it a quiet strength began to rise. I looked at my son, his soft brown hair, the way he smiled exactly like my father used to, and I made a decision. "Yes," I said. My voice was steady. "We will do the DNA test immediately." She blinked, clearly surprised that I did not argue or cry. My sisters, who had been sitting on the couch, exchanged glances. I did not care. I knelt down, picked Ethan up, and held him close, his little arms wrapped around my neck. In that moment I made a silent promise. No one would ever make him feel like he did not belong, not even the woman who gave me life. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more content, and comment with the name of someone special to you. What I did not tell her, what no one in that room knew, was that I had already started preparing for this kind of day. I had copies of important papers. I had spoken quietly to a lawyer months earlier when the first cold comments began. And I had something even more powerful than any document. I had the truth, and I was ready to let it speak. The days that followed felt like walking through a long gray tunnel. The appointment at the clinic was scheduled for the next week. My mother insisted on choosing the laboratory herself, claiming she wanted results that could not be questioned. I agreed without protest. Every calm yes seemed to unsettle her more than any argument would have. At home, Ethan asked questions I struggled to answer. "Why does Grandma want the doctor to look at my blood, Mommy?" I sat on the edge of his bed that night, smoothing his hair, and told him it was just a special test to show how much we were all connected. He accepted it the way children do, with trust. That trust only made the weight on my heart heavier. My sisters began calling more often. One tried to soften the situation, saying Mother was only protecting Father's wishes. The other was colder. "You always made choices that complicated things," she said. "Maybe this will finally settle the doubts." Their words cut deeper than I expected. I realized the family I thought would stand with me had already started stepping back, waiting to see which side would be safer. The waiting period after the samples were taken was the hardest. Every evening I replayed the conversation in the living room. I remembered the exact look in my mother's eyes, not hatred exactly, but calculation. as if my son was a possible expense that needed to be removed. I cried in the shower so Ethan would not hear. I wrote long pages in a journal I kept locked away, pouring out the hurt, the anger, the disbelief that the woman who once sang me lullabies could treat my child this way. Yet something unexpected began to grow inside me during those quiet nights. The pain did not break me. It clarified everything. I started reviewing the papers my father had left. I spoke again with the lawyer, this time with more determination. I gathered every text message, every recorded conversation in which my mother had spoken about keeping the bloodline pure and not letting outsiders in. I did not plan violence or cruelty. I planned truth. And truth, I was beginning to understand, could be more powerful than any inheritance. The envelope arrived on a rainy Thursday. My mother insisted we open it together, in the same living room where she had first made her demand. My sisters were there again. Ethan was at a neighbor's house, so he would not hear whatever came next. My mother opened the sealed report with careful fingers. For a few seconds the room was completely silent. Then her face changed. The results were clear. Ethan was my son. The probability was listed at 99.99%. He was blood. He belonged. I expected relief to flood me, but instead a calm settled over my shoulders. I looked at my mother and spoke the words I had practiced for weeks. You demanded proof that my son deserves a place in this family. Now you have it. But while we were waiting, I found something else. I placed a folder on the table. Inside were copies of messages and notes showing how she had already begun shifting certain assets away from any share that might reach Ethan long before the test was even requested. There were also records of conversations in which she had pressured my sisters to support cutting him out. Most importantly, there was a letter my father had written months before he died, one she had never shared. In it, he specifically asked that his grandson be protected and treated with the same love he himself had given. The room changed. My sisters stared at the papers. My mother's carefully controlled expression finally cracked. She tried to explain, to justify, to say she had only been cautious. But the evidence spoke louder than any excuse. Within days, the lawyer I had consulted presented everything properly. The estate distribution was reviewed. My mother's control as executor was limited. Ethan's future share was secured in a trust that no one could touch without clear legal reason. The consequences for her were not loud or dramatic in a public way. They were quieter and deeper. The family that had once deferred to her began to see the coldness she had shown. Invitations slowed. Conversations grew careful. She remained in the house, but the power she had held so tightly began to slip through her fingers. She had tried to erase my son from the will. Instead, her own standing in the family was the thing that faded. I did not celebrate her isolation. I simply stepped back with Ethan and built a life where he never had to prove he belonged. We visited the places my father had loved. We kept the good memories and left the rest behind. Looking back now, I understand the real inheritance was never the money or the house. It was the choice to protect a child's sense of worth. Blood can be tested in a laboratory. Love cannot. When someone demands proof that a child deserves a place, they reveal more about their own heart than about the child. I learned that standing quietly in the truth is sometimes the strongest answer of all. And in the end, that truth was enough to protect the little boy who still calls me Mommy and still believes the world can be kind.